Daniel chapter 7. Last week, we looked at the first, more than half, but we looked at the first half of chapter 7. And of course, this is involving this vision that Daniel was given concerning these four beasts. And these four beasts were prophecies concerning four upcoming world kingdoms. And we saw, in particular, the first three last week, but because Daniel wanted to key in on the fourth, so will we tonight. But I want to read just a few verses. We're going to be our text tonight will start in verse 19, but I want to back up and read just a couple of verses. Verses 7 and 8. This is part of the vision, and Daniel's describing it. He says, "After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth that devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things." And then jump down to verse 15. It says, "I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. And I came near unto one of them that stood by, and I asked him the truth of all this. And so he told me, and made me know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts, which are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. And then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the others which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and at the time, the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until the time and times and the dividing of time. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed me, but I kept the matter in my heart." And so, as I said, Daniel has been having this particular vision. He sees these 4 beasts, one that was, again, like, not exactly a lion, but like a lion, one that was like a bear, one that was like a leopard. And then he sees this fourth, and the fourth is, it doesn't even describe it like an animal. It's just different. It's just different. It's more ferocious. It tramples all the others. It's something altogether worse and more fearsome. And so Daniel, he goes to, and again, the text, I mentioned this last week, it never tells us who, but it says in verse 16, "I came near to one of them that stood by." And as we said, this is probably an angel. I don't know what else this would be, but he comes to an angel here most likely, and he says, give me some information here. What is this? And the angel begins to fill them in, kind of generally speaking, right? These beasts are the 4 kingdoms, and the saints, they're going to get their kingdom. And then Daniel says, but I want to know the truth of the fourth beast. And so he's really fixated on that one. Daniel could see this is something different. And so we talked about this, again, just to kind of recap. The lion-like beast, that kingdom represented Babylon. And then you have the bear representing the Medes and the Persians. You have the leopard representing the Greeks. And then you get to this fourth beast, this fourth kingdom, and it represents Rome. But it's entirely different. And so Daniel is very, very curious about this. And so this one, it says it's diverse from the others. And it says this a couple of times in this chapter. And it's really interesting to me that it labels the fourth one as diverse from a group that's already pretty diverse. I mean, again, these are beastly things. Not a lion, but something like a lion with wings, right? A bear with that's raised on one side, a leopard with 4 heads and wings. These are beastly things. So you kind of see these as diverse already. And then he says, but the fourth one, man, that one is just really out there. That one is just really different. And so it's described as, the fourth one is described as exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And so we talked about most of this last week, and we discussed how this is Rome. But what really stands out about this fourth kingdom is not necessarily how ferocious it is. I mean, that's part of it. But what really makes it stand out is the fact that unlike the other ones, this one has these 10 horns. And then out of these 10 horns arises what Daniel 7 consistently calls this little horn. And from this little horn that arises out of the 10, this is what really makes this stand out, because this 11th little horn, it says it plucks up 3 of the others from the roots. It almost prevails against the people of God. It has this time and times and a dividing of time, space, this period where you could say he reigns supreme. And so it is unlike anything that has ever happened. It is unlike anything that will ever happen as far as humanity is concerned. And so Daniel is seeing this, and he says, I have to know more about this. And so he's asking the angel about this. And so again, he kind of describes, the angel kind of re-describes for us what Daniel has already told us. And so we get a little bit of a recap here. But again, this little horn comes up. He plucks up 3 of the 10. This little horn had eyes, and it had a mouth that spake very great things. It says his look was more stout than his other fellows. He even stands out just physically so. The little horn would war against the saints. And like I said, for a time it would prevail against the saints. Not completely, not totally. We understand that, but he would prevail for a time. And then he would do this. He would have this prevailing time of preeminence and war against the saints. He would have this until the Ancient of Days comes in judgment and the saints possess the kingdom. And so you read all that and you think, well, this sounds a whole lot like Revelation. And that's because it does. It does sound like a whole lot like Revelation. You could very much say that Daniel is the revelation of the Old Testament. I mean, that's essentially, there's much of what Daniel says that is reincorporated in some other eschatological works, preeminently that of the book of Revelation. And so with that recap all in place then, the angel then begins to give a little bit of more information. And so the fourth beast is the fourth kingdom. We know that. This is Rome. And that this beast shall devour the whole earth. Now, there's 2 ways to take this. I'll tell you how I see this. But there's 2 ways to say this. Either he's speaking metaphorically, he will devour the whole earth. And the reason why I say that is because the Bible, a lot of times, will use language referencing the whole earth. And a lot of times when it uses that, it's in reference to what was the dominant landmass and empires at the time. Not necessarily the entire globe, but where most of humanity would rest. And so some people see this as kind of a hyperbolic thing. I don't see this as hyperbolic. I see this as literal/futuristic, meaning it will happen, it just hasn't happened yet. And so this little horn, or this fourth kingdom, will literally devour the whole earth. It will be global in scope and in its scale. And so again, if I take this literally, which again I do, then it forces me to say that this is something in the future, because obviously this has not happened. And so we're looking forward. And so the 10 horns then of the beast are 10 kings. This is what the angel tells us. 10 horns are 10 kings. This is exactly the same thing that John tells us in the book of Revelation. Revelation 17:12, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings. Right? And so the beast in Revelation has 10 horns. Here this beast has 10 horns, 10 kings in both. And so again, we are now forward in time, forward to what is you've probably heard this before, a revived Roman Empire. Now, exactly what that means, I can't sit here and tell you exactly what that's going to look like. I can't tell you if exactly how that's going to be undertaken. But what I can say is that in some sense, this global empire is going to, you might say, rise out of the ashes of old Rome. And this is something that's been tried before. I mean, Rome may not exist anymore as far as the empire that was back in the time of Christ, but the Roman Empire ideals very much carry on. I mean, if you study this out, much of what exists in our own republic exists because of the things that took place in ancient Rome. The ideals are still very much alive. And so somebody, we'll get to that somebody in a moment, somebody is going to try and, what you might say, resurrect the Roman Empire. And he's going to be successful. And it would seem that that in some way, and again, I can't give you all the exact details on this because we just don't know. We're not told. But in some way, this particular empire, at least for a time, is going to be run by a group of 10 kings. And so 10 kings are going to control this Roman Empire. And given there's a couple of times in Daniel chapter 7, it talks about how this little horn is going to pluck up from the root 3 of those kings. What it seems like to be indicating is that whereas there are going to be 10 kings ruling this newly revived Roman Empire, that 3 out of those 10 are going to be kind of preeminent. 3 out of those 10 are going to be kind of seen as whereas they're all 10 kings, those 3 are the most authoritative. Those 3 are the the highest links in the chain, and those 3 are going to be the ones that the little horn uproots. And as soon as he does that, as soon as he takes out those 3 that kind of seem like they're the most important, it all kind of crumbles and it all falls and it all goes to him. And so now, whereas there was a 10-king conglomerate running this old Roman Empire, now it's just the one horn. There's not 10 kings anymore. Now it's just the one. And so that seems to be, when you put together Revelation and Daniel, plus a few other places, it really seems to be that that's what they're telling us. And so he then describes this little horn in a little bit more detail. And so the little horn is none other than what he is seen as a few times in the Scripture. In 2 Thessalonians, he's called the son of perdition. In Revelation 13, he's the beast. 1 John chapter 2, he is the Antichrist. Both times he is described in this chapter, these 2 things are said about the little horn. That one, he has eyes like a man, and that he speaks great words. And so he has eyes like a man. That he has eyes like a man indicates that this little horn, this Antichrist, is very wise. He has a great amount of wisdom. You've heard the phrase the all-seeing eye. It's kind of that same imagery. And so the Antichrist is going to have you might say, otherworldly ability to have knowledge. And I believe that's the case because you get into Revelation and you see that this man is quite literally Satan himself. Satan has entered into this man, and this is a satanic representation of Christ's kingdom. It's a misrepresentation, but that's what it is. And so he has eyes like a man. He's going to have this wisdom that will be paralleled maybe by no other than Solomon himself. And then he has this mouth speaking great things. In fact, you see this 3 times in this chapter. He will have unprecedented oratory skills. He will be able to spin a yarn, as they say. He will be able to give these speeches and to compel people with his words. And so one thing that's always been interesting to me, and we won't go look at it, but in Revelation chapter 6 is indicating the first 4 seals, and the first 4 seals are represented by these horses. Well, the very first one, the one coming on a pale horse, is I believe, the Antichrist, and it says that he's coming with a bow, but interestingly, no arrows. And so he has a bow, which would seem to indicate that he's coming for warfare, but that bow has no arrows. That's because he doesn't need them, because the warfare he will undertake is one with words. He will be able to lead without, sword in hand, as it were. He will be able to speak and compel people just by the things that he says. And I'll just read from you from 2 Thessalonians, and this is kind of in keeping with all this. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, he says, Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and by our gathering together unto him, that you be not soon shaken in mind or be troubled, neither by spirit nor by word nor by letter as from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and then that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. He says, remember you not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. And so he's going to set himself up quite literally as God. How is he going to do that? By compelling people with his wisdom, the eyes of a man, and with his great words, with these things that he would be able to say. Now, again, we're not told here in Daniel 7, but you add together some of the things we read in Revelation chapter 13 in particular, and you see that he will also have the ability to do what you might call great signs and wonders. And so you kind of add these things together, and you see where this man is going to have a grip over the world, not just over a part of the world, not just over the most dominant empire of the world, over the world that is, again, unprecedented. He will use these characteristics, as we just read, to speak great words against the Most High. He will not just say things against God. He will say, I will show myself that I am God. Right? It's not just that there is no God. He's not coming. Now, this is the most interesting thing, is that when Satan's time in the sun finally comes, Satan's moment to have his empire on earth is finally here. The way he is going to do it is not by telling people there is no God. The way he's going to do it is by telling people, I am God. That's how he's going to do it. And he's going to convince them that he is God. And I think the reason that that's the case is because, just in line with what we've been talking about in the book of Romans, nobody can honestly say there is no God because they see it in nature. They suppress it. They suppress that truth. But that truth is there and that truth exists. And so Satan's not going to come and say there's no God. No, he's going to say I am that God. And so he's going to speak great words against the Most High. He's going to wear out the saints of the Most High and think to change times and laws. So that reference there to times and laws would not just be, whereas it could include this. It's not just going to mean that he's going to try and change the calendar and you know, he's going to roll back daylight savings time. No. This is religious. When it says that he's going to change the times and the laws, this is religious. He's going to institute new religious rules, and then establish himself as the object of the world's worship. And he's going to be successful at this. This is going to work. And that's because it's hard to kind of stick exactly to what Daniel's saying here because there's so many other things we could talk about. But that's because this is taking place in what we refer to as the time of the tribulation. And the time of the tribulation is a time period of God's judgment. And so Satan is allowed to have that time because God is using that time to judge the world. And so this is what's taking place. This is why he's going to be successful. It's not because he has finally won. It's not because Satan finally figured out how to pull the rug out from underneath God. And he's finally figured out this is the way I win. No, God's going to let him do this because through that God is judging the world. And so God will allow him to rule this way. The text says, until a time and times and the dividing of a time. So you have a time, one, singular, times, at least two, that being plural, and the dividing of time or a half a time, 1, 2.5, that's 3.5. Again, perfectly correlating with not only other portions in Daniel, we see in Daniel chapter 12, but also Revelation chapter 13. It says, and they worshiped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? And who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months, or 3.5 years. Or you could say a time and times and dividing of time. So again, Daniel and Revelation perfectly lining up and correlating here. And so taken all together, what we see, again, just to boil this down very quickly, this will make more sense when we get over to Daniel chapter 9. And Daniel chapter 9 gives us another prophecy concerning the end, commonly referred to as Daniel's 70th week. We'll talk about that when we get over there. But the tribulation will be a 7-year period of God's judgment upon the earth. Most, I'm premillennial. Most premillennials would say that the first 3.5 years, or the first half of that tribulation, is not mild or not peaceful, but it's just not as bad as the second half. And the second half, when these things finally are undertaken, that is what would be referred to as the Great Tribulation. And so the final 3.5 years of that tribulation, or time and times, the dividing of time, 42 months, all these time markers that fit, that is going to be the time where he is making war with the saints and not just making war, but prevailing. It would seem as if he had more time, he would have been victorious. He would have stamped them all out. But God has his time prescribed. He will not get a second longer than what God will allow him to have. And once that takes place, then the Ancient of Days is coming. Judgment is coming to pass, and God's kingdom begins. And so, all the power and dominion that the little horn will have is all given to him by God, and just as he gave it to him, he will take it all away. And so you can liken this to the book of Job, right? The book of Job, the accuser of the brethren. Satan comes and he's accusing people. That's what he does. And God, interesting, the thing that people forget oftentimes about the book of Job is that Satan is not the one who brought up Job. God is the one who brought up Job. God says, have you considered my servant Job? And Satan says this. He says, well, of course he believes in you. You won't let me do anything to him. That's what he says. You have a hedge of protection around this guy. I can't touch him. And so God says, well, I'll remove it to a certain degree. Right? You can do this and this, but you cannot go beyond what I will allow you to do. That's the same thing that's happening in the tribulation. God's saying you can do this and this, but you cannot go beyond what I will allow you to do. And Satan is powerless to go against the word of God. And so this is what exactly what's going to be taking place. He will have his time, but then God will come in judgment over him. And so his dominion will be consumed and destroyed, is what it tells us in the text. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. And so we will enter into a time of Christ's kingdom where we will reign along with him. And so the kingdom of the little horn will be impressive. Nobody's doubting that. It will be impressive. Again, it will be the only truly global kingdom that will have ever existed. However, it is limited to just 42 months. The kingdom of the Most High is everlasting. It is unending. There's not a time period. There's not a definite end. And then furthermore, unlike the little horn, who again will have global dominion, will never have a global allegiance. Because the little horn, even though he has dominion over the whole earth, will always have a contingent of saints who are resisting him. Right? He's making war against the saints. Why? Because they're not falling in line with everything he says. Right? And so he's going to have always a contingent of people resisting him. Well, that's not going to be the case with Christ's kingdom. And so Christ's kingdom, he will come and it says, all dominions shall serve and obey him. Not some, all of them. And so again, Satan can only imitate. That's all he can ever do. He can only imitate. He can never produce. He can never reproduce perfectly or exactly what God can do. And so we see this with his kingdom. You see this in the example I always like to use is Moses and Egyptians or the Egyptians magicians, Pharaoh's magicians. I'll get it right in a second. Moses throws his staff down and turns into a snake. They do that. And that's the thing that I always like to point out to people. They do it. Their staffs also turned into snakes. Their snakes just happened to get eaten by Moses' snake. Right? And so they were able to imitate it, but Christ's power was always preeminent. God's power was always preeminent. And so he will have his time. He will have his imitation kingdom. But again, it will be nothing compared to the kingdom of Christ. And so the little horn will never be victorious, for he can only do, as I've been saying, what God allows. Christ will come in victory, and he will make his end sure. Walter Luth, I like the way he words this. He says, but we know of the Son of Man, who is at the same time the head and shepherd of the fellowship. The shepherd sees the lion coming, and the bear, and the leopard, and the fourth beast, and does not flee. Does not flee. And so Daniel, at the very last, it says, he kept the matter in my heart. He was troubled by this. And that makes perfect sense. It is troubling to think about what's coming. It's a blessing to Christians that are alive today that we won't experience this. But it is troubling to think of what's coming, to think of the actual terror that's going to exist upon the earth as Satan reigns over this global empire. However, what we can do is sit back and say, this is all according to God. And for Daniel and for us today, troubled though he may be, he could rest assured that the Son of Man was coming, and as I said earlier in the chapter, and there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. And so again, yes, Satan will have his time, but that time will end in judgment. And so one thing that's interesting, and I encourage you, every time you, there's a handful of times in the New Testament where it speaks about hell, and it tells us what hell was created for. And so, the one thing that I hate about the common media, depictions of hell is that the way they always depict this is that Satan and some, little red creature with horns or whatever and a pitchfork, that he's standing there in judgment over the people in hell. No, that's not hell. Hell was created for him. Hell was created for him and his angels to suffer. And so Satan is not going to rule over hell. Hell was created for the suffering and eternal damnation of Satan. And so that will be the end of his kingdom. His kingdom will end in ruin and in destruction and in his eternal damnation. And then Christ comes and sets up his eternal kingdom where we will reign and rule along with him. So again, it's a wonder that God is able to do this, but it's a joy and a comfort to Christians. And I've mentioned this already, but I'll just say this. What a joy and a comfort it would have been to hear that for the Jews in captivity, right? They've been taken from their land. The temple has been destroyed. Maybe they're thinking, well, what is to become of all these promises, right? God has said a lot of things. A lot of these things haven't yet come to pass. And here's Daniel just saying, be patient. Be patient. These things are going to happen. God's kingdom is coming. It hasn't ended. His plans haven't changed. And so this was a comfort. It's a comfort to us today. It would have been a comfort to them as well. Okay.